evening, and welcome to Screentone Club. This is episode 22, recording on the 31st of March 2019, for release on the 2nd of April 2019, so we can avoid all those atrocious April Fool's jokes that the entire internet is now full of, because it's now the 1st of April in Japan. I've already been caught out by a few, and am now miffed, because why do they have to make like April Fool's jokes out of things I want, and then go, haha, it's not real? It's like, well, you suck. But who is certainly not an April Fool, or a fool of any kind, is my co-host, Mr. Andy Hanley. How you doing, Andy?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. I feel like I'm only not an April Fool because it's not April yet. Like, we'll wait and see come tomorrow. But as we discussed before we started recording, I think we're both feeling the effects of losing an hour's sleep more than anything else right now. We must be getting old, because suddenly it's like, oh, that hour was really important to me.
Yeah, I feel like I mostly just needed it, and now it's gone. It's like, oh, I needed that. I mean,
I have no excuse because I've had like a week off, so I've just been like laying in every day. So it's not like I should need more sleep, but somehow just taking away that singular hour has just sort of destroyed me utterly, and I'm just kind of a quivering wreck at this point.
Yeah, Sundays are weird because it's like, at least where I am at the moment, because it's like, okay, I wake up at a decent time, I feed the cats, blah, 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 and then suddenly it's like 2 p.m, I'm eating dinner, and it's like, what? No, hang on, where's the day? And now the sun's going down behind me, so what? Anyway, enough of this. So, this is your fortnightly look at manga, not the weather, with a focus on joint discussion of the titles we're looking at. We will announce the next series ahead of time, so you can read them alongside us, and you can join in if you so wish. And you, as always, you can send us responses, questions, and comments on the series we're covering. If you so fancy and would like extra bonus content, you can support us on Patreon for a mere $1 a month. You get free bonus episodes every month. We just published on Saturday a episode about Cardcaptor Sakura, the legendary Magical Girl series by Clamp. I think that was a good old one. It was a good little sort of delve into that series, which ended up enjoying more than I expected. Also worth noting is we're doing what every other podcast now does, and I've put up a small preview of that episode in the main feed. So if you refreshed your podcast feed thinking we had a real episode for you, haha, it's a preview. Please give us money, maybe? Question mark? That'd be nice. Either way, talking about giving us money, we've gone on to a shout-out section where we shout out people who have done just that at a silly tier. And that'll be Rob Jessup, once again. Thank you very much, Rob. Much appreciated, as always. You are, frankly, actually paying for the hosting, so that's really nice. So, moving on to the rest of the podcast. First and foremost, we have returning champions, which I'm kind of putting an asterisk here. Nothing I want to talk about at length, but I have finally started reading Voynich Hotel again, and I read volume 2. And I want to read volume 3 before we delve back into an extended discussion of that. I know we talked about it before when Andy had read it. This series has the weirdest, deepest lore, in the way that, like, you kind of just effortlessly, stuff happens and it builds out its various structures and its character sets and its worlds, frankly, the worlds it inhabits and the characters who also live there and the various reality structures that have now started to come apparent. And all of it is very much, I don't know, me personally, I'm kind of approaching it with a great amount of, yeah, sure, go ahead, do that. You're putting it down, I'm enjoying what you're putting down, and I can feel I can pick it up. And I have no problems with all of this. So this is kind of jumping back in time for you a bit, Andy, but did you feel that as well, where it's just like, oh, this stuff is happening, but I'm cool with it?
Yeah, I think it's definitely one of those series you can kind of immerse yourself in it as much or as little as you like without kind of impacting your enjoyment of it. Like, I'm pretty sure you could probably sit there and say, right, I'm going to make my own wiki about all the deep lore of the Voynich Hotel and probably like glean a lot out of it and be really kind of fascinated by it all. But yeah, I kind of came at it from the same angle of view as like, oh yeah, sure is some crazy stuff going on here. Like I'm kind of keeping up with it to the bare minimum that I need to, and that's absolutely fine. Like it still does everything that it needs to, and I'm still kind of getting all my pleasure out of this series like elsewhere. But it's almost like background radiation. You're just kind of aware of it, and you know it's important enough to kind of keep tabs of the big picture. But yeah, there's a whole kind of layer to it that's just like, yeah, it's cool that exists, but you know, I'm fine just leaving it as it is.
Yeah, I think the most important part of it is that one thing I want to make clear is that you don't need the hypothesized wiki to actually get the most out of it. Like, the ultimate way of enjoying it is to just read it as is presented in the book form that it is. Whereas, like, I'm a big fan of sprawling, ridiculous, like, storyline and, canon Bibles. Like, hell, I kind of, like, I kind of fed myself into the pit of the Fate-iverse and the greater Type Mooniverse by getting really hooked on reading the wiki, which is not everyone's cup of tea, and frankly is, even I would admit, a suboptimal way of telling some kinds of stories. Like, if you go to watch, say, for example, 2 movies about Fate Stay Night, and you're still hella confused about half the stuff happening because you didn't read the wiki and or play the original source material, kind of not the ideal way of presenting a movie there, lads. But the Voynich Hotel, as it is, like, presents you things in a very exciting fashion, but not having to justify itself constantly. Like, for example, they're like, a character has like a mask of truth, basically, and it doesn't over-egg it, it doesn't under-egg it, it just uses it well. It justifies the character, it justifies the item's use in the world, and it makes the whole series better as a whole. Hooray! Everyone wins. Especially the person wearing the mask. Kind of. They have a lot of anxiety about it, but that's something for the series. But yeah, I'm looking forward to Volume 3. At this point, at the end of Volume 2, there's so much stuff set up that I'm fascinated to see pay off. And yeah, I think we talked about it before about how, it ends well and on its own terms. So I'm looking forward to it a great deal. But yeah, there's some cool stuff. And hell, important to remember, even if you're in a wheelchair, you can still go out with a 100-year-old witch, I guess. So,
thank goodness this has finally been confirmed.
Yeah, no kink shaming here. So, moving on to our picks for this evening. Do you mind if I go ahead first, Andy?
No, please do.
Cool. So this was one I picked up, I mentioned just because it seemed interesting as a premise, and then, well, I'll get to that. So this is Giant Spider and Me, a post-apocalyptic tale. It's presented and written by Kikoro Morino, and the publisher is Seven Seas. They of the other kinds of monster arena, but this one is thankfully chased. The series is complete at this point, and it is a mere 3 volumes long. It's available both physically and digitally. I bought it from Bookwalker, as is normal. And yeah, this was the first volume. And so Giant Spider and Me almost doesn't need the subtitle of a post-apocalyptic tale. And if anything, the post-apocalyptic section is a complete, like, utter side note that you don't really need to worry about. In fact, at one point there is a 2-page spread where you see the fact it's a post-apocalypse, and the characters then immediately diffuse it and go, yeah, but who cares? So whatever. So Giant Spider and Me stars, I wrote it down. I know I'm bad at names. Where is it?
Nagi is the main character.
I can't read my handwriting on my notes. This is stupid. But anyway, you have Nagi. She lives alone. She is a undeterminable aged child who seems to age up and down depending on the panel, which made it rather confusing for me to try and grok her maturity and age, but whatever. So she lives alone. Her dad has a real bad case of wanderlust. He is off adventuring somewhere. He sends crap back from time to time. They live in this little lovely sort of rather idyllic log cabin in a wood. Nagi herself tends to fields and goes foraging, and generally, like, sort of looks after herself and the house. She minds the place. And while walking back from the fields one day, she happens upon a giant spider with lots and lots of eyes and a rather silly little sort of thorax covered in, like, leaves and a lot of eyes. And Sid Spider isn't really too fussed about attacking, but mostly sort of chases after Nagi to give her back a pumpkin she dropped, which is important and polite in this modern era. So Nagi kind of, like, realizes she can't really communicate too directly with the spider, but they have, like, a rapport going on. Like, characters later on mention this, that, you know, it's not a one-to-one relationship, it's not a direct relationship, but there is a rapport going on there. And so she names it Asa, which is obviously the word for morning, because she discovered it in the morning. Kids not exactly the most inventive with naming. And the rest of it is kind of 4 chapters. The first chapter of setting this all up takes a good chunk of the volume. And then there's 4 more chapters where they kind of get on with their daily life. The part that is the sting in the tail of this, for me, is that this manga is secretly a cooking manga. And if you come into this, you think, oh, good, it's like a survival after the apocalypse, and it's like, an isekai kind of otherworldly sort of, surviving and getting on with friends who isn't a human. But no, surprise, it's a cooking manga, and each chapter dedicates at least 6 pages to a single recipe as it goes through the dish du jour, including one that made me very confused when suddenly Nagi busts out a tin of tomatoes. It's like, wait, where'd you get the tin from? Hang on, that requires infrastructure. You can't just say there's a tin of tomatoes. Anyway, whatever. I fixated on strange things in this series. But yeah, it's surprise, it's a cooking manga. Did you see that coming, Andy? Because I certainly didn't.
No, I didn't. That did kind of catch me by surprise, and I felt a little hoodwinked by it. I mean, that was the part of this volume that I liked the least. I really enjoyed kind of Nagi and Asa's kind of everyday goofing around and or adventures. But whenever it got to the cooking bit, my eyes kind of glazed over a bit, because it's not even really that interesting in its presentation. It kind of almost feels a bit shoehorned in. We've talked about some other kind of cooking manga, and we've talked about other series that kind of, involve cooking heavily, and they all kind of have a spin on that, or a way of making that kind of interesting. You've kind of got the Delicious in Dungeon sort of affair of, kind of a basically completely kind of fictional cooking manga. And then, you have other things that are kind of, based more around restaurants, et cetera, kind of wakakazake, that sort of thing. And this just felt like, it kind of felt like they'd somehow just sort of bolted this on at some point. It's almost like kind of the author had sat down with their editor and they said, hey, have you heard what's hot right now? Cooking manga. It's selling really well. It's like, oh, well, I can put some cooking stuff in this. And so, thus the cooking section of each chapter was born, which is maybe a little harsh, but that was kind of how it felt to me. It felt like I was almost just having bits of a different series dropped in for a few pages every chapter.
Yeah. I agree with you, especially because it takes on a very different tone. It's almost like there's a timeout sort of element to it, where instead of it being an end of chapter omake / little side note about the dish they cooked, it's just dropped straight into the chapter. And, it kind of makes the rest of the series feel a bit flat. Sorry, I was trying to say 3 things at once there and caught myself out. But basically, it makes the series feel flat because suddenly I'm sat there thinking, wait, was this entire chapter just a setup to make a turnip soup? Was that it? Was this the entire point of this chapter when, I don't really want drama out of this. And, it does different sort of stuff. It obviously explores Nagi and Asa's relationship and their sort of rapport and, the perils of living on your own and the fears and, what you do in a world that is kind of collapsed somewhat, but not in destructive fashion. And, everything's just, the greater structures have just gone and fallen away, but still lives in this idyllic sort of living on the land sort of structure. I mean, hell, there's plenty of time to go and plant crops and go on a picnic and fix the window. And, the series ends on quite a sort of strong panel where it's like, oh, there's someone here with a gun and a gas mask. And I must admit, actually, that turned me off entirely because I still didn't feel comfortable with the 2 main characters yet and their kind of living. And I thought there was much more to be gained from just the quiet sort of conflict-free world that they found themselves in and were meandering around, still feeling out the relationship with Nagi and Asa and what Asa's version is. And frankly, the part of me, as mentioned at the top, is that I still can't get a grasp on how old Nagi is and what her, is she mature? Is she a young teen? Is she just a kid? I don't understand her place in this world, which is rather sad when she is the point of view character and the main narrator of everything and is the kind of lens through which we discover the rest of the world. So the series as a whole, that kind of fell flat for me because I didn't ever find anything to latch too strongly onto. And whenever I did find something I wanted to latch onto, again, Asa, there wasn't enough there for me to really get my teeth into until it's now cookery time. And I'm just sat there going, well, yeah, okay, I don't really care. So. Yeah.
I mean, I think the feeling that I kind of came away with this first volume from was kind of one of I really enjoyed, as mentioned, just kind of Nagi and Asa just kind of goofing around in their everyday adventures. And I kind of almost wish that, like, the post-apocalyptic side had been kind of torn out, and it was just like, hey, here are these two characters, you know, they live in some little house on the hill, but, like, it's not a post-apocalyptic world. And hey, here's their kind of healing adventures of just, you know, goofing around with this cute spider thing, which is strangely adorable, even though it shouldn't be, apart from when it opens its giant gaping maw, and you're like, oh god, this is terrifying. Which the series, like, the volume also does a really good job of. Like, you have this moment of like, oh, this spider's actually really adorable and cute, and you just want to pet it, and then it opens its mouth like, oh, okay, which is kind of a fun little moment that it has. But yeah, like I enjoyed the kind of the sort of, it's not really the character building or like the relationship building between those two characters. Like, I feel like they sort of bounce off of one another quite well from the get-go, but it was just kind of everything extraneous to that sort of felt like it was trying too hard in a sense. I mean, again, like, I had a really strange feeling about that cliffhanger at the end of the volume, because on the one hand, and especially having noted that it's only 3 volumes long, there is a part of me that's like, I kind of want to see where this goes. But at the same time, I was also in the same boat of you as like, this is not what I've been enjoying about this series at all. Like, I wasn't waiting for the guys with gas masks to appear, you know, like extras from Stalker. Like, you know, I was quite happy for these two characters to just continue doing their thing and being cute girl and cute spider, have cute adventures in cute house.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. It's also a case where there's the majority of the things in this volume, in this series, I don't care about. As a result, like, as you say, I want the cute adventures, and everything else can kind of go away. But at this point, it's me trying to make the manga into something it's totally not. So it's kind of a weird read, and I was really excited at the start because, you know, initially it has this very watercolor painterly look for the cover and for the first few pages, and I was like, oh man, this is going to be cool. Oh no, okay, it's back down to like normal art, normal but very nice and very accomplished, you know, actual just pencil line drawing and such. But even then, the gulf between, oh man, this is going to be dope, and oh no, okay, I got my hopes up. Nope, it's not that. So kind of, yeah, I kind of kept putting my investment in stuff that was just not carried over by the rest of the series. Like you say, like the post-apocalyptic part doesn't need to exist. Like the cooking part is fun, but doesn't need to exist for me. And just all these other elements, like even the fact that her dad's away kind of doesn't really need to exist. And if anything, feels more like a stumbling block for the series that it keeps having to step over every time it gets raised. Like it causes more questions than it answers. Especially now when especially at the start when it's trying to get up, you know, some momentum to it.
Yeah, I mean, again, it does almost feel like kind of, you know, the elevator pitch for the series was like, oh, it's this girl and this giant spider who's actually, you know, adorable and you know, makes for a fun pet. And then at some point there was some kind of like editorial meeting of like, no, you need to flesh this out. Like it needs more to it to be saleable. And then, you know, other things started getting bolted onto it. And maybe that's not how it came about at all, but it's kind of how it feels from kind of the outside looking in. Like it was weird. Like for me, the few pages that were kind of watercolor styled, I don't know whether it's just like a Comixology thing, but it looked really terrible. It was really badly scanned on the Comixology app. So I was actually quite relieved when it switched to a different art style that seemed like it was actually suitable for the reader, because I was kind of having a concern that I wasn't going to be able to make anything out because the first few pages looked really weird.
Oh, that's wild. Yeah, I was on Bookwalker as mentioned, and I was also reading it on my actual like PC monitor rather than my tablet for once. And no, it looked fine. It looked, you know, as I say, painterly, so I was quite enjoying it. But that's wild. I didn't know. Oh, I have to take a picture of that somehow and show. It'd be interesting to compare notes on that.
Yeah. I'll have to take a screenshot and drop that over to you, because it was really weird. It was one of those like, is this book broken? Has something weird happened here? And then when I got into the standard art style, it was absolutely fine. So it seemed like there was something. It's almost like it'd been scanned in at the wrong DPI or something, because it just looked horrible.
Giant Spider and Me, an avant-garde adventure. But I must admit, like the fact that like preparing for this podcast and seeing it's 3 volumes, I think it does the same thing it does to you, where I'm like, well, it seems almost silly not to see it through to the end, but equally that's 2 other volumes I could be reading in the meantime. And it's just kind of this slightly exhausting feeling where I want to like this series because it has shades of other series I really like, with the, the whole calm, sort of healing, almost healing style, just everyday life in a different set of shoes element. But at the same time, at that point, it's like, well, there are many other series I can think of that do that part for me better. Whereas this, and also the one thing I will say is that I want to know more about Asa, but there's very little investigation into the spider. Like it's, there's one mystery that happens around the spider, but there's not much drilling into, are all spiders like this now? Is Asa just weird? Like, what's the deal with Asa? What's up with the weird sort of combination of different, like, why are there flowers on its butt? Like, what's going on? But none of that is even appreciated as a question. So maybe that's not something the series is actually going to, like, recognize or consider being material. So maybe I'm barking up an entirely wrong tree.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it almost puts like a full stop at the end of that sentence, because there is a point in this volume where kind of Nagi's basically like, I'll probably never figure out what this kind of weird spider-like thing is, because like it's not even really confirmed that it's actually a spider. It just
because it has a tentacle feeler thing, doesn't it?
Yeah, but it does a lot of spider-like things, but like there's no like absolute evidence that like, yes, this is definitely a spider. But yeah, it feels very much like it kind of shoots that whole question down of just like, well, we'll never know. And like I'm kind of fine with that, because it didn't really impinge on the stuff that I did enjoy about this volume, and it's kind of frustrating because I did really genuinely like the stuff that I liked about it. Like it made me laugh a few times. Like it was cute and sweet and kind of like relaxing to watch sort of the everyday stuff panning out, but certainly like that cliffhanger at the end in particular, like as curious as I am about it also felt like a signpost of like, this is going in a direction away from what you've been enjoying here. So, maybe this isn't for you, which again, like when there's just 2 volumes there, it's very tantalizing just to grab it just to find out. But it did feel like it was maybe kind of a shot across of just like, well, if you were just happy with this cute spider, then hey, there's some other stuff that we're going to be digging into here.
Yeah, I mean, maybe there'll be a sale. I know that 7 Seas are not the big ones for digital sales, but you never know. So yeah, we'll see. So that's kind of me. I've already repeated myself enough, so that's kind of me on Giant Spider and me. Yeah, I must admit, like I say, like the one thing that is nice is that the spider is always like kind of cute, even when it's slightly scary. It's still cute, mostly because its gaping maw still looks kind of comedic and silly. Although I will admit the first 2-page spread you get of it is like, man, look at all those teeth.
Yeah.
Where do you put all those?
Yeah. Like I feel like there's an interesting kind of experiment here for somebody with arachnophobia to read this and like to see where they land on it, because I imagine they'd be all over the map of like, oh, maybe this isn't so bad. Oh no, this is terrible. Yeah.
What have you done? Why are you Clockwork Oranging me this stupid manga? Oh dear. Cool. So yeah, that's Giant Spider and Me, a post-apocalyptic tale. So moving on, Andy, do you want to introduce your pick?
Yes. So my pick for this podcast is Danza, which is another series from Natsume Ono. We covered their Aka 13 a fair few podcasts ago, and had a variety of thoughts and feelings about it, but obviously Natsume Ono is quite a popular author as things go, and this seemed like an interesting kind of series, because it's actually a collection of short stories, which Kodansha sold it as a collection of stories about being a foreigner, sometimes even in your own home, which is kind of on the money. Like it's perhaps a little more complex than that, but it is very much about people who are kind of not feeling kind of welcome or comfortable in the circumstances in which they find themselves for whatever reason. And it's a series of 6 shorts, all of which are kind of varied in length and setting, although Natsume Ono sure does love Italy and that particular part of Europe, because Italy and indeed France kind of turn up throughout.
Yeah, it also, for me, kind of filled in a few parts about Aka 13 and some of their other works where it's like, yeah, I can see your influences. Like, yes. You totally do love Italy. And as someone who does also like Italy, yeah, totally. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, so, yeah. Italy and guys who smoke. That's what it's all
just
about.
People, well, they don't even seem to smoke intentionally. It's just a thing that happens around, like they just do smoking by living, right? It's just smoking happens with them around.
Yeah, indeed. So I guess to kind of like go through each story briefly in part, the first story is called Rubber Boots, and it's probably a good kind of kickoff to this manga because it kind of goes places more than any of the others do, and it's kind of like it does sort of catch you unawares, because basically it's a story of kind of actually, no, I'm getting this in totally the wrong order, so scratch that bit. So Rubber Boots is the first story. It's about a young man who visits his parents' vineyards to kind of help them out. And it has a weird twist to it. Like, I feel like I didn't really get what its ultimate goal was exactly, because it did catch me out of left field a little bit with how it ended up, but it was like, I sort of felt like there was a layer of the narrative that I'd somehow kind of missed in terms of what it was really setting up here. Like, I don't know what you got out of this one in particular.
So, sorry, Andy, I'm not trying to rain on your parade with this, but I have the same reaction to nearly all of these stories, apart from the ice cream one we'll get to. But my general read on this story in particular is the introduction one, but to lesser and greater degrees, the rest of them, is that I felt like the build-up was outsized to the payoff, where the build-up feels like it always has like one too many elements, one too many layers, one too many pieces of information that seem prime and important, and then the payoff is usually something quite simple but still satisfying that does resolve things. But I was given too much input for how it wanted me to process it with the resolution, and always at each time left me feeling slightly unsatisfied as a result. Does that kind of tally? Especially this first one about Rubber Boots, where, you know, main character goes to visit his dad. The family life appears to be split somehow, like mother and father appear to be split. There's an uncle involved who may be like a family friend uncle rather than a blood relative uncle. And like there's tinges of loss, and, you know, this person, Michelle, having died the previous year, and, you know, he never drinks his own wine, and all this sort of stuff about the vineyard and the wine and his father and the various relationships about the main character and, you know, the old country. But then when it comes to it, the resolution is like a nice affirming, like, clink of the glasses sort of thing. And I was left, well, this is a nice resolution, but it feels like you're resolving you're resolving the whole thing, but in such a simple manner that it suddenly shrinks everything down and finishes it. And I'm like, well, I had all this stuff. You did all this stuff to build up, and I'm totally feel kind of weirdly at sea and kind of cut loose. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely kind of how I felt about this one in particular. I mean, I'm kind of with you that there is an element of that to virtually all of the stories, but this was definitely the one that kind of left me the most nonplussed, because yeah, like there was a lot that went into the story early on, and then kind of when it came to its final payoff, yeah, I felt like I must have just missed something, because it felt like there wasn't really anything to get my teeth into to kind of, you know, join the dots and be like, oh, okay, yeah, here's kind of, you know, the emotional payoff, here's the intent of what this story is trying to put across. It felt very much like it just finished, and I felt like I'd been kind of left a bit empty-handed on this one.
Yeah, I'm with you, especially because this is the first one, and there is a certain commonality among these. I believe the whole, like, feeling like a stranger even in your own front room sort of thing does work for these stories as a through line or a narrative thread. But with this one in particular, I could never figure out what thread I was supposed to be following. Like, you know, again, with the departed friend, the father, blah, blah, blah. It never quite really meshed. Like too much. It was too much there, so I couldn't really sort any of it out.
Yeah, that's definitely kind of where I came in on that one as well. I mean, in contrast, like I quite enjoyed the second story here, like Memories of the Lake, which basically has kind of a young boy that meets this kind of strange man who's looking for somebody, kind of ends up inviting him into his house because this young lad has a pretty poor relationship with his father and doesn't really give a shit what happens, basically. So it's just like, yeah, sure, you can come and hang out, whatever. Like, I don't care. My dad doesn't seem to care, so whatever. And it basically introduces the fact that this guy, this stranger, is actually a time traveler, which is a big plot twist for this particular story that seems like it's kind of relatively mundane, and suddenly it kind of throws time travel in there. And then it kind of explains like the reasons why this time traveler is here, why he's visiting this particular house, and has kind of effectively conned his way in there. And I liked this one. Like this, I felt like I could see the through line of it. It's still a little bit unusual in terms of how it ends. Like it's not really it's certainly not really a happy ending in the broadest sense. Like it's not necessarily an entirely satisfying ending, but like I could kind of see where the characters were all coming from and could kind of understand what they're all doing in a way that's like, okay, yeah, this is sort of an interesting take on how this whole thing has kind of panned out. So I found this one way more satisfying than the first, and it's probably kind of up there as kind of one of the two stories that I sort of that gelled with me, I guess, in this collection.
Yeah, I enjoyed this one quite a lot as well. The main thing, sorry to repeat myself, but again, it had one too many elements to it that muddied the waters. Like there's multiple layers of secrecy in the characters and what they want to tell each other and the various like character web that exists. But there's like one too many sort of like endings to it where like a sting in the tail of, oh, who's gonna like split and do something strange, or who's gonna fuck up the timeline almost. But it has one too many, like, I don't want to say it because it is kind of mean to blurt out the actual main ending, but there is a kink in the ending which left me feeling really unsatisfied because it's just, oh, okay, you were building up to something, but now before you actually pay it off, you've cut the knees out from under it. And while I'm still interested in how you resolve it, it really kind of, cut me short 5 pages from the end. Also, frankly, I had a hard time telling the difference between the characters at times because they all were different shades of like dude wearing glasses, and because the camera. So one thing in general is that Natsume Ono in this like is a lot more plain in their styling of their characters, which it looks a lot more sort of mundane compared to Akka, which is like very stylish with very little. Please see our previous episode about Akka 13. But with this, it felt a lot more plain, a lot more flat, which just made it difficult when you have the camera constantly moving around a scene, but the characters don't have enough differentiating features for you to tell them apart when it is literally 3 dudes with bad hair receding problems and glasses. And when you can't tell the difference between like the time traveler and the kid, it's like, okay, this is bad. Like I can't tell anymore.
Yeah, I that's definitely like I'm glad you brought that up because that is definitely something that I was going to kind of raise around this book as a whole. But like this is definitely the story that has the biggest problem with that by its very nature of kind of like characters that are all interrelated, and like it is very hard to tell them apart. Like I was really relieved when you get to like one of the latest stories. It's like, oh god, thank god this guy has black hair, because it's like at least I know that I'll be able to tell you apart from the other guy that has blonde hair because I have a line in the sand there to delineate them. But there are definitely like moments in quite a few of these stories where I'm kind of like squinted, like, wait, is this guy A or guy B? Okay, I think I've got it now, and then turn the page and have that dilemma all over again. But this was definitely the one that was a real headache in terms of kind of trying to figure out who was who. But like you say, it is a good example of kind of how Natsume Ono's art has come on, between now and Akka 13 is something far more recent, because like the style is definitely there and very similar, but there's a whole kind of extra level of kind of like detail and characterization and etc. that makes it a whole lot easier to read.
Yeah, there's like a finessing of the craft that Natsume Ono can provide in the more recent works.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is interesting in its own right from an academic point of view. And to get back to it, I did like this story because it's kind of the one story where once it was long enough and had enough detail to it that I got my teeth actually into it and did enjoy it. But then again, towards the end, it just had one too many layers, and I was left there going, "Oh, okay, hang on, all right, hang on, what's going on here?" Like this, that you gave me too much information again for this very short story. But I did enjoy. This was kind of one of my favorites, as mentioned.
Yeah, I kind of think likewise here. I mean, actually, like my outright favorite was probably the next story, Diorama, which is basically about a daughter who comes back to visit her family with her husband, who is a German American, if I recall correctly.
Yep.
He's also hella tall, and it's kind of really about the sort of the tension within that kind of extended family, in particular between the girl's father and his son-in-law. Like, son-in-law is trying really hard to kind of like get in father-in-law's good books and kind of failing miserably or like actively screwing up. And kind of like, as it progresses, you kind of see a little bit of kind of the softer side of the dad in terms of like, he does kind of want to like reach out an olive branch, but he feels like he's already kind of burnt his bridges and doesn't really know how. And it's really just the story of these two characters kind of trying to find some kind of common ground that they can use to sort of build some kind of relationship between them. And there's something I can't really verbalize exactly what it is about that, but there was just something that kind of caught me about watching these two characters kind of dancing around each other, trying to figure one another out and kind of get a read on one another's emotions, especially with kind of the additional sort of roadblock of kind of, you know, the language and cultural differences that you know, even though the son-in-law has learned some Japanese, like obviously it's not his native language, like he can't eat sushi because it messes with his stomach, and it's like it's all these kind of little things that have kind of ended up as wedges between him and this extended family, and kind of watching them try to close that gap and to what was actually kind of a pretty satisfying ending. I just really liked it. It felt very kind of real and kind of relatable on a certain level to me, and I really liked it for that.
Yeah, I kind of enjoyed it for some of the same reasons, especially because, you know, the entire rest of the cast, including the sushi bar owner, like they kind of realize and appreciate it, that it is like the father-in-law's job to get over this and to kind of find his own way forward, because he doesn't want to be an obstinate like old fart, but he keeps doing it like for different reasons, and it kind of helps a lot that things get worse before they get better, and it kind of, you know, adjusts what is important. It shows it shows that he is willing to like view what other people care about and do in their lives, to then be as a bridge for him to, you know, open up. And it is this case where it's a very direct case of growth on his part without other characters being undercut or sort of undermined, which, you know, you could have had the like typical like stupid argument between daughter and father about, oh, why don't you like my husband? It has a mention of that, but it's all, everyone appreciates that, okay, he will come around, just we need to do his turn on this, which I really enjoyed. Like the resolution isn't completely clear cut, but does have a nice way of going, okay, there is a path forward for this, and the future is a lot brighter than it was. But yeah, it's very good. Of course, as mentioned before, it plays a lot with height and with perspective, and, you know, characters being up and down and different heights and such. So, you know, Natsume Ono already does a lot of verticality and camera work in panels, but this chapter especially plays it really well.
Yeah, it's kind of really fun all round, and yeah, like I feel like even visually, it was certainly kind of the most sort of arresting of all of them. Like it had interesting things to do, like you say, with kind of its paneling and the verticality in it, and yeah, like I think it was enjoyable for that as well.
Yeah, it does also have the most on the nose discussion of the theme of the volume, where, you know, like the sushi bar owner's like, oh, I've been seeing you a lot in here. Don't feel like you got your own place anymore, eh? And it's like, okay, yes, I get it. Like, thank you, secondary character, for like pointing out the theme. yeah,
it's kind of a surprise he didn't go and say somebody should write a manga about this. It would be great.
Oh no, God! If they did do that, I would have thrown the tablet. God.
Yeah, so that kind of then takes on to the fourth short, which is the shortest of shorts. Like there's not too much to this at all. This is the Gelateria and the Carabinieri. I think I probably butchered that somewhat, but whatever.
Carabinieri.
Yeah, it's basically about a spot where police end up being stationed opposite an ice cream shop, and the torture therein of having to stand there on duty whilst people are eating their ice cream. And it's really, it's very short, but it made me laugh at the end. So it was kind of worth it, of just like, this policeman is like, oh yeah, I remember when I was a kid, like I used to tease like the policeman station there and just like eat my ice cream, like really, really slowly, and really savored it in front of him just to piss him off. And then of course it turns out that that's somebody that he works with now, and et cetera. And like, it's very simple, but it's just like, that amused me. It made me laugh at the end. So fair play to you, Natsume.
Yeah, I was dreading it when after, like, when he goes back on duty a second time. I'm like, man alive, is this going to like drag out for, like all the like some of these other stories? And then no, it's over. I'm like, oh, thank God.
Yeah.
Oh, phew. But no, it is cute. Also, like you can tell this is like the most direct, like Natsume Ono love Italy, because I think I know the location that's referred to, and it's a real place opposite a famous gelateria.
Yeah, I believe I saw in the translation notes at the back that it is based on like the oldest ice cream shop in Italy or something in Rome, I think it is.
Yeah. And,
so,
I'm a big fan of Italian ice cream, like gelato. So, I'm right there with it. But yeah, the translation notes actually, as a side note, are pretty funny because they're like, hey, this is where these things are set, okay? Just in case you got confused. It's like, okay, thanks.
Yeah, that felt like a very much kind of, for our American readers who may not be familiar with Europe at all, like, here's the thing. Because, yeah, it's like, all of these stories, as somebody who's European, like, you can kind of, straight away where all these places are, like, within a single panel. But I guess if you're not kind of a native of that continent, it probably needs a little bit more kind of noting. So I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, when Italy is like £29 and a 1.5 hour flight away, kind of a bit easier to know it off by heart, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. And so then the penultimate story is called Smoke, and this is one that I just didn't really kind of gel with at all. It's basically about two brothers who have a very different kind of demeanor and outlook on life, who end up like trapped in an earthquake waiting to be rescued, which is always a classic kind of narrative device of like, oh, two people trapped in a building who don't get on with one another, and they have plenty of time to sort stuff out, and they do, but I didn't really care. Like, I don't know what it was about it, but like there was nothing. I feel like there's just nothing in the way those characters were set up that made me interested in kind of their lives or their kind of philosophies of life. So, when everything was happily resolved or whatever, it was just like, fine, good for you, I guess. And then I just kind of like went on without really thinking about it too much more.
Yeah, my only note written for this is question mark, because I didn't understand the characters, even in the setup. I didn't understand their dilemmas. I didn't understand what they were talking about when they were talking. It's just, I didn't understand the stakes or resolution or anything. I just, couldn't get my arms around it at all. Which, no idea. And also at this point, no real interest in trying to reread it to grasp it. It sounds extremely mean, but just didn't touch me at all.
Yeah, I mean, this was probably the one story that felt like a short that maybe needed to be more than just a short, that maybe needed like a couple of chapters of like, hey, here are these two characters in their life before this party where they end up getting like trapped in a castle basement, so that you can figure out what these people are, like what their past together has been like in kind of, more explicit terms. Because I feel like, they just felt like two kind of character archetypes just kind of smushed together, and without kind of understanding them on an individual level, it's very hard to kind of feel any kind of engagement with what they're doing or kind of, what they're working towards.
Yeah, at all. Yeah, especially because I didn't understand the beef whatsoever. So maybe that's just because I'm an only child. Who knows? But yeah, no idea.
Yeah. Glad it wasn't just me. But hey, maybe this is what happens when you have two only children on a manga podcast. So if you have any different opinions, then get in touch, I guess.
Calling all quintuplets, come on our podcast.
Yes, clearly we should stop talking about anything that involves siblings. So that takes on to the last story, which is called Partners, which is basically about two cops who are partnered together. There's kind of a veteran and a newbie. Rumors start going around the police station that kind of strains their relationship. And I quite like this one. This was definitely on the kind of like, oh, you can kind of see where Aka 13 came from list, because it very much has that sort of vibe between its kind of like police basis and sort of some of its characters. And I quite like this. Like it felt like this could be kind of a solid episode of any cop show, where it's just like, you've got these two kind of very different kind of chalk and cheese detectives working together, and something comes up that kind of puts a rift between them, and then it all gets resolved at the end. And it's like, yeah, that's cool. I'm okay with that. That was enjoyable enough, I guess, but like nothing kind of particularly groundbreaking or amazing came out of it for me.
Yeah, it was definitely enjoyable. I must admit, this one got much, much better as I went through, because initially I just couldn't get my head around the two main characters, and when the aforementioned rumors started swirling, I was like, wait, hang on, is this important or not? Like, where does this put things? And it took me a while to get my head around the characters, honestly, because I just couldn't grasp their relationship or even what they were doing, which is maybe more me missing the point. But yeah, I did enjoy it towards the end when it's like, oh, this is a cool little, you can, as you say, you can see where Aka 13 came from, where it's like, well, who cares about actually catching criminals? I want internal affairs, the manga. And yeah, this totally follows on that and does do some interesting stuff around that with the characters and, how you react to things and how the characters interrelate. And it's kind of cool in that regard where, it kind of is the one short story out of this lot that I feel like had the properly segmented beginning, middle, and end without anything weird happening or anything spinning off into its own direction.
Yeah.
By the end, I was like, okay, this wrapped up. That was good. I don't feel overloaded or confused about what's going on here.
Yeah, and I think it probably also, much like Smoke, you could make the argument that it maybe needed to be kind of a multi-chapter thing where you kind of get a bit more of these characters before they enter this situation, rather than kind of like dropping you in, and giving you a very brief kind of roundup of like, oh yeah, like here's the basis of their relationship, of their working relationship. Now here's the dilemma. Here are these rumors swirling, because it is difficult to latch onto characters when you've not really seen much of them beyond a few panels that are kind of a very blatant, like, hey, here are these two personalities. They're very different, full stop. Now onto the story part, which, it's a difficult skill. Like, I think it's writing any kind of short story like that is always difficult for that very reason. Like, you've not got a lot of time to work with to make you care about characters. And I think it does say something for this story that it does kind of manage to win you over relatively quickly once kind of, the rubber hits the road, as it were. Yeah, I mean, it's mostly that when the actual rumors first appear, I was like, are there rumors? And I didn't quite grok that was my introduction, rather than I'd missed them beforehand. So it got kind of wild in that regard, where I'm like, hang on, did I miss something? No? Okay, whatever. So yeah, as you say, it feels like it needed a little more space to kind of just put its stall out. Although at the same time, it spends a lot of time talking about how their elevator is out. And it's like, yeah, cool. It's a nice bit of flavor, but I feel like I'm missing some setup here. Yeah, I having worked in buildings where the elevator's been out of service, I can confirm it is pretty much all you talk about until they fix it. It's like, man, elevator's still not fixed. It's still not fixed. Man, I have an elevator. I have 3 elevators at my work, and they fail constantly. But everyone just kind of goes whatever. So probably because they're used to them breaking all the time. Yeah. You see, what they should have done is like combined the final 2 stories of this volume and had the 2 guys from Smoke trapped in the lift in the police station where the other guys were complaining about the lift not working. They could have just merged them into one. Oh no, yeah, just mash all 6 stories together into one stupid shared universe. And then at the end they all get an ice cream and it's all great. Hooray! Only if I get an ice cream as well, somehow. Yeah, it's your new bundle purchase. Like, buy this digital manga and you get a voucher for an ice cream. As long as it's not digital ice cream. Yeah. Unfortunately, you've got to go to Rome for it, but I'm fine, happy to do so again. So, but yeah, it was kind of an interesting sort of section. Like, it makes me appreciate Aka 13, which feels like a really powerful backhanded compliment, because, like, see our previous discussion about the art, but it did make me appreciate Natsume Ono's art anew, where this, as mentioned, feels a lot more flat. And in Aka 13, it kind of has this effortless, amazing charm to it that really comes through, which, again, makes me appreciate that series all the more for what it can accomplish. Yeah, it kind of shows what an extra kind of few years of work can do. I can't remember when it originally came out, but I think it was relatively early compared to Aka. I mean, in a broader sense, I feel like it kind of helped me appreciate Natsume Ono more as a whole, because I've kind of like I kind of watched and had a weird relationship with the House of Five Leaves anime, and I could kind of, between that and Aka 13, it was very much a case of like, I can kind of see what people like about this author, but it's maybe not quite my thing. But I feel like the more of their stuff that I consume, the more I'm kind of coming on board with like, yeah, there's actually something to this, and I'm sort of getting into, picking up what they're putting down. So yeah, I feel like I'm slowly being kind of won over and converted to that cause.
Yeah, it's kind of this sort of gaining oeuvre almost. I am interested in the next series by Natsume Ono. I remember the name of it. It's Badon, which is the main capital of Aka 13, and it's basically like 4 dudes open a bar, and that seems like a really good springboard for a lot of stuff that Natsume Ono does with both shorter and longer narratives. So kind of excited to see what happens there.
Yeah, there's going to be a whole volume where they tried to ban smoking, and it's like, no, you can't do that.
Yeah, how dare you? No.
Yeah, like, what am I going to draw now?
It's so useful to obscure parts of characters' faces when they need to look shifty. But yeah, so yeah, that was Danza. And, as mentioned, it's a 1-volume thing. It's like a standalone item. Also, it guest stars the most powerful character of all, a Nokia 3310. So it's good.
Yes, yeah. If you needed to kind of like age when this was probably created and formulated, I guess that probably gives you some clues. But
I did cheer when it appeared because I was like, yeah, Nokia 3310. Like, oh man, just date the series entirely.
Yeah, can't beat them. But yeah, like I think definitely like if you're a fan of this author, like, and you haven't checked this out yet, it's worth a look for all of the reasons that we've discussed. And it definitely, like, it's always a risk with short story collections that it's always a weird kind of value proposition of just like, how many of these shorts am I going to like? But I feel like there was at least enough here to say like, yeah, this wasn't kind of money wasted, like even regardless of having the discussion point on this podcast. It was just like, yeah, I liked enough of this to feel like I got my money's worth out of it. And that's, that's pretty good going for a short story collection, because sometimes those things can be frustrating or disappointing.
Yeah, I feel like this is going to sound so frigging up myself, so forgive me, but I feel like in the book about Natsume Ono's overall career and work, there's going to be a very interesting chapter on Danza where the author, who is far smarter than me, like basically can unpick and spin out this as like the Rosetta Stone of the rest of their development. Maybe, but that's just my personal feeling of like, okay. Like I had a greater appreciation, as mentioned again, sorry, but I had a greater appreciation for their general work as a result of reading this. So maybe not a good introduction to the Natsume Ono, perhaps, but I think a very good thing for fans of the author.
Yeah, it's definitely a kind of go back to it after, assuming you've read and enjoyed like House of Five Leaves or whatever. Like, this is kind of the direction of travel, is you can then go back to something like this and kind of appreciate it for what it is. But yeah, as a starting point, it's a little too kind of early and formative and kind of clumsy in places to really work out. Yeah, certainly. As mentioned, like, some of the stories feel very overdeveloped for how they then end. And it's like, wait, hang on. Is that it? Oh, okay. So yeah. But yeah, so that's Danza, the 1-volume sort of collection. So, moving on from that, talking about what we're going to talk about next time. So, in the next 2 weeks, we're going to be reading another series. I have picked for next time the currently simulpubbing series Chainsaw Man, which is coming out on Weekly Shonen Jump. I'm interested to hear what you think about this, Andy. I've been enjoying it quite a bit and think there's a lot to talk about in this series. Although, I will admit, and this is kind of like putting my thoughts out there ahead of time, I recently found out, I don't know why it took me a while to put these together, but it's by the author of Fire Punch, which is a series I absolutely detest. So, whoops, I have to like grit my teeth a wee bit and go, I still like Chainsaw Man, I don't like Fire Punch, so we'll see. But yeah, that's my choice. Because there isn't actually a physical volume release of this yet, or a collected volume, it's all just single chapters on the Shonen Jump app. Read until you're comfortable finishing and have an opinion, I suppose. Shrug. So, how many chapters are there currently?
Like 15.
Okay.
The first chapter is the most important one because it's like a 60-page honking great, like, a la Shonen Jump. It is the one where it sets its stall out.
Yeah.
And then from there it goes to 12. It goes to 13 and 20 pages. So, yeah. And for yourself?
So I decided to pick a series that I saw the anime adaptation of a couple of years ago now. I think it's a 2017 show. And it's one of those series that really kind of surprised me of like, oh, this has a lot more to it than I was expecting. Like, I kind of watched it just because, and it turned out to surprise me in a whole bunch of ways. So I've been meaning to check out the source material for a while, and so why not now? So I picked Volume 1 of Alice and Zoroku.
Yeah, I've seen this floating around like the periphery of my manga space, so I'm interested to read this. It also kind of falls into like an entire sort of collection of other age gap friendship titles that there are multiple of now, which is kind of wild. But yeah, so moving on to Closedown, you can see our website at Screentone.club, view our previous episodes, download them, etc. The podcast itself can be found on our website, on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, and all good podcast catchers. If you fancy, please think about leaving a rating or a review. That stuff really helps with visibility. Tell a friend if you also tweet about it. That stuff, again, really good. Like that sort of organic discovery really helps with getting the word out there. You can also tweet at us at Screentone Club. You can also mail us at show@screentone.club. And one thing to note, just as a quick bit of patron business, starting, tomorrow as we record this, it's going to be April, which means a new month of voting. Given that Cardcaptor Sakura itself was a surprise come from behind victor, you too can make a change, and as even a single vote may mean that we don't have to read a light novel. Or we do, I don't know, whatever floats your boat. So, personal plugs. I'm Elliot Page. You can find me at Elliot Page on Twitter, where I try and continue to post cat pictures, including my cat, which has discovered it's mostly liquid now, at least when you put it in a lap. And Andy?
You can find me on Twitter at Hannah's1979.
Cool. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And, goodbye.
Bye, everyone.